thank you very much for that kind and thorough introduction. I'm thrilled to be here in Lisbon. I'm thrilled to be at the 10th Annual Citi Quant Research Conference. And looking at the past venue, I'm hoping that maybe I can be a regular, looking at the various cities around the world. So keep that in mind. But I'm excited to be here to talk about risk in financial markets and to visit with all of you. So I'm just going to dive right in. At CFA Institute, we recently adapted social media. I'm sure folks here are aware of things like Twitter and Facebook. And so I'd like to say that the Twitter version of my talk is given by Niles Bohr here in this quote, the 140-word limited character definition of my talk, which is, forecasting is difficult, especially when it's about the future. So we are going to be talking about risk, we are going to be talking about returns, and obviously that is a forecast in our modeling exercise. And even though we sometimes think we can put a fine point on it, forecasting is difficult. But I'd like to start my talk with an anecdote. Now, let me set this up for everyone. This comes from, the story here is about, of course, black swans. And Alan Greenspan's quote here, that the recent financial crisis was a once-in-a-lifetime event. Now, these authors in the Financial Analyst Journal, and by the way, I'm editor of the Financial Analyst Journal, so I'll draw lots of stories from various articles in the Financial Analyst Journal, not only my own research. But these two authors, Zhou and Zhu, in the FAJ in 2010, put this question to the test. In fact, they asked the question, which is the title of their paper, is the recent financial crisis really a once-in-a-lifetime event? And they set about to answer this question with a very straightforward model. In fact, they said, what is the probability of a 50% cumulative drawdown in stocks over any 100-year period? And they put in place a random walk model with two assumptions. They assumed a 7.5% return and an 18% standard deviation, which of course corresponds, as we all know, to some of the reality of markets over the last 100 years, at least in the US. So with that simple model, they set about to answer the question, what is the probability of a cumulative 50% drawdown in stocks? Now, this is a quant group, so everyone here, I'm sure, knows the answer. Does anyone think it's 100% or near 100%? So some folks, what about less than 50%? Anyone think that it's less than 50%? So the majority of folks think it's somewhere between 50 and 90%. Well, the answer is that they came up with is 90%. So in other words, a 50% drawdown, given these assumptions of 18% standard deviation and a 7.5% return, is a near certainty. So this raises questions about the notion of a black swan and about the notion that financial crises are a once-in-a-lifetime event. If you remember from Nassim Taleb, who coined the black swan term, and I've dedicated this black swan picture to him, that there were three elements required to be a black swan. Right? Black swan events have to be rare, they have to be unexpected, and they bring large consequences. And so this analysis sort of raises the question of, well, are black swans really unexpected and are they really rare? And I think not, right? I mean, this simple example is a counterexample to that. And in fact, I was having dinner one evening with my friend Larry Siegel. Many of you probably know Larry. He's our research director at the Research Foundation of CFA Institute. And we were talking about this notion in this paper. And Larry said to me, he said, you know, Rodney, there really is no such thing as a black swan in financial markets. He said, what they really are black turkeys. So he coined this term black turkeys to sort of counterbalance this notion of black swans, and that black swans don't really exist. And so I asked him to write this up, and he wrote this up for the FAJ, and the title of his article is Black Swan or Black Turkey. And so he set about to debunk the myth, if you will, of the black swan. And in that paper, and I draw a table from his paper that shows about 12 or so events over the last 75 or 80 years where the market drew down 50% or more cumulatively. So the notion, again, that these large drawdowns are rare simply is debunked with this example. So that brings me to my main thesis and my main point of my talk today, which is to say that we financial economists, in my view, need to do a much better job of understanding risk, communicating that risk to our clients, communicating that risk to investment professionals, and also debunking ideas that are simply not true. So we must seek a better understanding of risk in financial markets, and in that regard, building better models and building a better structure to accommodate these large drawdowns that we frequently see. So when thinking about risk and return in financial markets, I think it's always important to first think about return and where do returns come from. Where do returns come from? Well, we all know returns come from the overall economy. So just to have a look at this, I plotted the return, the growth of $1 as invested in the price index for various countries. The price index of the stock index for various countries, and the growth of $1 is invested in the gross domestic product of these countries. And here I have France and Germany, and what you can see is over the last 45 years or so, the price index and the GDP index have grown at about the same rate. This should not be a surprise. I mean, after all, returns must be linked to the overall economy. It's the same case for the U.S.